Well, thanks everybody for joining today. Excited for you all to be here. I'm sure there'll be some more that'll trickle in, but we are recording this. So today's topic is really talking about hybrid work environments and fostering inclusivity. This originally stemmed from a session we did at the MISA conference a couple of weeks ago and thought best to go. We just couldn't share all the technology, so really wanted to do a dedicated session and invite a wider audience as well. So just quick introductions. I'm Nigel Brown, VP of Professional Managed Services for Microserve. So I've got overall responsibility for a lot of the deployment of the back-end technology around modern workplace practice areas. Work heavily with our audiovisual team, who does a lot of the physical room deploy and setup. With that, I'll turn it over to Evan.
Hi, and thanks for having me. I'm Evan Zaleschuk. I am a technical architect at Microsoft, and I work with our partners, and specifically Microserve. And my role is really around Microsoft Teams, helping people understand meetings, calling, how you deploy it, how you support it, and all the different flavors that can meet a customer's business requirements and help them improve upon those.
Awesome. Thanks, Evan. So, kind of diving right into the topic, starting it off, if there's anything that the pandemic has really taught us, is that we really can work remotely, and depends on the organization and what tech and tools you had, maybe was the experience, but by and large, we all figured out that we can do it. Using tools like Teams and Microsoft 365 have really helped enable a lot of that, and that's going to be what we're going to dive into a little bit more, or Evan will shortly. But right now, it's really all about that shift into the return to office. And the reality is that it's not the same as it was before. Some people are really excited to come back and be able to collaborate in person and see their coworkers face to face again. Others are the polar opposite, where maybe a little bit more gun shy about the pandemic and don't want to do that yet, or a lot of everything in between. These are just some of the questions that come about in dialogue between clients, what you're seeing in the press and things like that today. But it's interesting. Both employers are worried about it. How do we support it? How do we enable it? How do we make sure we have inclusive environments to do that? On the flip side, even just this morning, I saw an article in CBC News that was talking about, if I stay working from home, is that career limiting move? So I think, I'd encourage everybody today to think about, how do we make sure it's not a career limiting move? Leveraging the right technology, maybe that we didn't adopt fully because of the pandemic and we're all stuck in the virtual meeting. It really does shift when we go back to the office. So with that, Evan, I'm going to turn it over to you to dive into the demo and take things over here to show us some of the capabilities, and then I'll wrap it up.
Perfect. Thanks, Nigel. And what I'm going to do today is I want to take you through some of the things how I use Microsoft Teams sitting at home. I live in the Okanagan Valley in British Columbia, and I think there's a lot of people from BC on this call. And I look out the window and I see Kalamalka Lake. I'm probably 6-hour drive from our closest Microsoft office. I've been a remote worker since I joined Microsoft 5 years ago. Before that, I was a principal in a Microsoft partner for 7 years. I lived in Calgary at the time. I had colleagues that worked for me all over the world. And we deployed Link and Skype for Business as a partner for companies all over the world. So I've been living this life for quite a while. What I want to take you through today is a little bit of a journey about hybrid work, and as Nigel mentioned, being inclusive in your meetings. And when I talk about being inclusive, it's how are those people on the other side of the camera or on the other side of your headset or speaker, how are they experiencing you in your meetings or in a one-on-one call? How do you look on your camera, or how do you sound? And really, how you sound to me is one of the most important things. So we look at the specific technology. But working from home or working from an office, there's a scenario that I'm in a lot. I have my Eastern counterparts in Toronto, and they can't tell time very well, and they like to invite me to meetings at 5 and 6 o'clock in the morning, and sometimes I have no choice. I have to join. So we might be in the middle of a call, a meeting. We're collaborating. We're going through content together. Everybody's got video on. Everybody's talking. Everybody's looking at a PowerPoint presentation. Maybe I need to get up and get a cup of coffee because I'm tired. Or a more realistic scenario would be, I'm in my office. and I have to go to a customer meeting, but I'm in the middle of a call, but it's time to get to the meeting. Maybe there's a lot of traffic. I want to leave the office, but I don't want to leave that meeting. What do I do? So what I'm going to do is I want to show you something that if you're running Teams today and you have a mobile device, this is something you can all do. So we're going to do that first. Then I'm going to take you into one of our meeting rooms. It's running Surface Hub, then a Microsoft Teams room, and then we're going to come back to the desk and kind of wrap things up. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to share with you a meeting that I'm in with some of my colleagues. So here, I'm actually using the web browser, the Teams in a Microsoft Edge web browser. It's supported in Edge, it's supported in Firefox and Chrome and other browsers. And look, I challenge people to try using the web browser every once in a while. All you got to do is go to teams.microsoft.com, log in with your corporate credentials, and you'll find that it's very full featured. And at times you forget you're actually in a web version of Teams. Sure, you can use the desktop version, but imagine the possibilities. With Teams through the web, I can go anywhere on anybody's computer, log into Teams and work. And when I log out, none of that information is there. It doesn't stay on that computer, it's gone. So there's a lot of security in the fact that, well, I can go anywhere on any device and I can access Microsoft Teams just like I'm sitting in my office. So here you can see I'm in a meeting with a couple of my colleagues. Colleagues are down at the bottom, Deborah and Alex, and we're going through this presentation. And we're all talking about the presentation, and we're going to give it to one of our customers or maybe another part of our organization. So what we need to be able to do is get this in order. One of my colleagues is currently controlling the presentation. So as that colleague goes to the next slide, we see that change. Now, I've uploaded this PowerPoint presentation into the meeting. How many times have you been on a call where someone's presenting content, they're sharing their desktop, and then some other presenter takes over and you keep hearing them say, next slide, please? Well, you don't have to do that when you use PowerPoint Live within Microsoft Teams, which is what I'm doing, and we'll show you what that looks like. So I'm sitting in this meeting with my colleagues. Maybe I need to go make that cup of coffee. Maybe the doorbell rings and I'm the only person at home and I got to go answer the door. Or maybe I just need to get to that next meeting. What do? You grab your mobile device. In my case, I'm going to grab my Surface Duo. Yeah, I work for Microsoft and they were kind enough to give me one of these to play with. And I'll tell you, I love having both screens. So this is a 2-screen device and I've played with it. I opened the hinges, I closed the hinges, I've taken it places with me, dropped it. It's actually quite an impressive device. And the fact that I've got 2 screens, well, I'm more productive. I have 2 screens at home. Actually, I've got 3. So I like having 2 on my mobile device. Yes, I still have my Samsung Galaxy, which I love, but when it comes to productivity, this Surface Duo, I feel I could take to any customer meeting or on any business trip, and that's the only device I need. So I'm in this meeting, I grab my device. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the Teams client on this mobile device. Do you like the Teams app? I better not say no. So here you can see as soon as I'm in the Microsoft Teams app, look what happens. Across the top of the screen of my mobile device, it says, oh, looks like you're already in a meeting on another device. And it doesn't matter what screen I hit within Teams, it's right up at the top. I could dismiss it, but what I want to do is I want to join into the existing meeting from my mobile device. So I'm going to do that. When I click join, I'm presented with 2 options. I can, 1, add this device without audio. That's key. Or I can transfer to this device where I'm leaving the other meeting behind. What'll actually happen when I transfer that device is the transfer will happen and then it'll terminate the meeting on my desktop. It's transparent. It's not like it used to be in the old Skype for Business days. There's no delay. So people on the other end don't really know that you've switched devices. But for today's demo, let's do this. Let's add device. When would you use one versus the other? Well, I would use add the device if I'm going to go make a cup of coffee, answer the door, but be back at my desk before the meeting ends. So only leaving for a short period of time. If I'm leaving for the day, or if I'm leaving for a meeting outside of my office and won't be back at my desk, I would transfer the device. So let's click on add this device. Now what happens is I'm presented with that pre-meeting join experience, and all of a sudden, watch what happens. I am in the same meeting on my mobile device that I'm in on my desktop. And here's why I love having the 2 screens. I still have Microsoft Teams running over here, so I can have chats with people separately. I could look at my calendar to see when I'm available again. Everything is still there. I could be opening up Microsoft Word, anything on this other screen, but still participating in the meeting. So here, I still have one of my colleagues who is presenting in the meeting, and you'll see when they change the content, it changes on both my desktop and my Surface Duo at the same time. No smoke and mirrors, this is happening live. The Teams mobile client is the first application I reach for every day when I start my workday. I often ask people, what's the first application that you look at when you start your workday? Most people say Outlook. Not for me. Outlook for me has become an application I only look at once or twice a day. Why? Well, I like shiny things. So when I see all those unread messages in my inbox, I waste too much time trying to address them. More important things come to me in Microsoft Teams. I want to address those right away. The mobile client, very similar to the desktop client. So even though I am not at my desk, I can still do things like raise my hand. So I don't want to interrupt the presenter, but I have a question. I can raise my hand and I can be acknowledged. Remember, we want to consider the people on the other side of the camera and how they can be engaged and remain engaged in our meetings. We want everybody to collaborate together. So I raise my hand to ask a question. I'm acknowledged. 3 dots. 3 dots anywhere in Microsoft Teams means there's more that you can do. I can put my hand down. But look what else I can do from here. I can start a recording. I can record this meeting from my mobile device. Why? Because that meeting gets recorded and rendered in the cloud, not on the device itself. So I don't have to have all the storage space and processing power locally because it happens in the cloud. I can lock people out of the meeting now, so nobody else is allowed in. I'm not going to let anybody barge into my meeting. I can have my whiteboard. I can turn on closed captions from myself. Maybe I'm on my way to my customer meeting and it's getting hard to hear because I'm walking down the street or I'm in a noisy environment. I can turn on closed captioning and I can also follow along with what everybody's saying in the meeting with speaker attribution, which means as a person speaks, it identifies their name and what they say. Very powerful when you're in different scenarios. I can share content. I'm sharing content not necessarily just from my mobile device, but I'm sharing it from OneDrive or the cloud, so I don't have to have it again on this device. So there's a lot we can do within the mobile client, and I encourage people to try the mobile client and everything you can do. Now, the other thing here, you'll see I can take control of this presentation. Why? Because of the way we loaded the presentation into the meeting. The initial presenter didn't share their desktop. They went in and, well, they could have done it from the mobile client and said, share. When you click share, uploads into the meeting versus sharing your desktop. So we have all these options within the Teams mobile client. Now, when I go back to my desk.
Actually, Evan, one quick one to interject before you switch gears. Yeah. One of my favorite ways to use the mobile client is really more as a companion device, even when I'm in the boardroom. So if I'm sitting in that boardroom, but I didn't bring a laptop, or maybe I'm a staff member that doesn't have a laptop, I only have a desk PC, you can use that basically as your meeting chat device or the ability to do the thumbs up or things like that. So I just wanted to throw in, that's probably how I use it the most, unless I'm on the road. But even in a boardroom scenario, I think that's something you want to enable your users to actually engage and go, yeah, join with your audio off. It will detect if you're in a Teams room. And, then you can actually use some of the same stuff that you used to use at your desktop.
Yeah, great point, Nigel. And that's the thing that's the beauty of, as we use the tools more and more, we start understanding how they can impact our lives. Like how, I take my Microsoft hat off, Teams has changed the way I work. I participate in fewer meetings every day. I usually ask people, hey, you want to participate in more meetings every day? Everybody's like, are you crazy? How about more calls every day? No, but what if I could teach you how to be more collaborative? In this case, Microserve can come in and help you understand, well, based on your business requirements, based on your business pains, here's how we can help you with Microsoft Teams, even from this simple perspective, because Teams can do so much. So get back to my desk. I hang up my mobile device. Call was great quality. We do that for specific reasons. and I'm still in this meeting. I can continue having this meeting with my colleagues. They don't even really know that I've left my desk unless I have my camera on and all of a sudden I go missing. But you could still turn the camera on the mobile device and everybody can continue to see you or see what you're seeing. That's the other brilliance of it. Using the camera, I can show people maybe that fancy new coffee machine that I'm so proud of. Look at what I got. So we have that flexibility. Now, what I'd like to do is go from here. Let's go into a meeting room where I have a Surface Hub. So I'm going to stop sharing here. I'm going to turn off my video here, but I'm going to stay connected on my headset. And the reason I'm using this particular headset is when I take my mobile device, as we did in that demo, when I start walking away from my desk, well, you got to think about the technology that you're using. If you're using your a headset that's plugged in, you're not going to get very far from your desk. If you're using Bluetooth, you can get a little further, but Bluetooth is susceptible to interference and has a limited range. I'm using something called DEC technology. Our vendors have that. Microserve can help you find the headset that's perfect for you, but it gives me the ability to walk about 400 feet away from my desktop. So I can roam around my house. I can go let the dog outside to go to the bath. Anything I need to do, I have that flexibility. Now, I am going to pop into the meeting from my Surface Hub. Looks like I kicked myself out by accident. Oh, here we go. And one here. Okay.
I'm sure this is what everybody's offices look like, right? How many
Well,
devices in there?
yeah. And I am, everybody can see me. Yes. Hi. All right. So the first thing I wanted to do is I wanted to talk to you a bit about the Surface Hub, the device that I'm on right now, and you'll be able to see it later from the camera system over there. And sorry about the mess in my office. I'm just kind of a chaotic guy. So I'm standing in front of my Surface Hub, and you'll notice that I've got a camera here that's pointing at me. And this camera system that the Surface Hub comes with is great for the people that are up at the screen presenting. But in a scenario where you want to use the Surface Hub in a boardroom where people are going to be seated, maybe that camera isn't quite sufficient because as I move further away and I sit down at my boardroom table, I'm harder to see. Well, the brilliance of the Surface Hub and Microsoft Teams is we can plug additional camera systems in to accommodate different use case scenarios for that meeting room. For example, I've got a system from Poly plugged in here, and I can simply, the same way I change my camera system in Microsoft Teams, I can do that with the Surface Hub. So I have that capability within the client to do it. But what I want to do is I'm actually going to start sharing content from my device. And I'm going to share the screen of the Surface Hub. And I'm going to share the PowerPoint presentation out. And where did it go? Here we are. And oh, you're not seeing it. I apologize.
Outside the live demos, right?
Yeah, just give me 1 minute and I will get this back up.
You know, I think while I was doing that, one of my big points for in terms of the workers that continue to work from home, if there's anything that I would suggest is what might have been okay in the first 6 months of the pandemic in terms of technology, maybe microphone quality wasn't that good. If we're going to keep up with hybrid meetings, that's not really okay. We need those people to come in loud and clear into the boardrooms. So we need to also think about the devices in people's houses and make sure they have mics that are appropriate, the headset like Evan was talking about, for example.
Okay, screen. There we go. All right, sorry about that. So I wanted to talk to you about space and what we consider when we're looking at a meeting room. And I think it's really important to understand that there's a lot of different ways we can configure a meeting room space. And really, we need to focus on what I call people's personas, or how they're going to need that meeting room to work for them. And we really consider a few different things when it comes to the design of that meeting room space. But there's a great document here that feel free to download it. It's something that Microsoft's done, our work trend analysis, that talks about hybrid workplaces. This is something that Microserve is familiar with, where we look at work sites, we look at people's locations, and we look at their working hours and how the pandemic and everything has changed, but people need to be the center of it all. There's a lot of great statistics and information at this link, aka.ms/worktrends2021. This is one of the studies that Microsoft did, and I find that it's quite valuable. But let's talk about the actual space, or as I mentioned earlier, what I refer to as personas. Microsoft talks about personas of groups of individuals. I used to travel 2 weeks of every month. I'd be at my home office, in airplanes, or in hotel rooms. My persona was Mama's traveler. Other people that might be contact center or help desk people, well, they're only working when they're at their desk. When they get up for a break, they don't want to be answering customer calls, or they don't want to be answering calls for your organization that people might be calling into. So meeting rooms have personas as well. What do you need that meeting room to do for the people that are going to use it? And when we look at meeting rooms, I like using these slides. These are slides that Microsoft has. And in this room here, we've got a Microsoft Teams room, and we're going to show you a Microsoft Teams room soon. In this room here, we've got a Surface Hub. Now you'll notice here the table is round. It's not rectangular. And in this case, we've got chairs around the table. And what's nice about this is everybody's facing the camera. Nobody's back of their head is to the camera. And more importantly, there's wheels on all these chairs. So it's easy to reconfigure that room, or easy for people to move around, because remember, these people in the room can see each other easily. What about the remote people? We want the remote people to feel like they're included. These people could be in another meeting room, or they could be sitting at home. They could be anywhere. Over here, same kind of idea, but a triangular table. Again, we're avoiding this space here so that the remote participants aren't seeing the back of people's heads. Now, I'm collaborating with you on the Surface Hub using the pen. We can actually have two people up here collaborating at the same time and drawing. My wife never wants to do these demos with me, so you just get me. Here, I don't like this meeting room in the corner here. I want to make this really big to show you why. Because I'm interacting, and you're going to have people that probably want to get up at the display and interact and annotate and do things to make their presentations more appealing. But look what happens here. The boardroom table is pushed right up against the wall, so that kind of eliminates that option. Sure, people can still sit and collaborate, but not as effective.
And I think, Evan, my biggest takeaway that actually Dina from her AV team taught me with that is the different concept between the room that's really just designed to present and share the screen versus that, the change of mindset. If this is going to keep going, we actually need to collaborate together. We need to use whiteboards together, interact and use a pen. I think that's going to become a lot bigger focus point. It's one thing when you were just sharing a screen, but we need to be able to interact a lot more and do that co-creation side, at least in my opinion.
I agree. This little pen can make things so much more engaging for the audience. Instead of death by PowerPoint, well, still PowerPoint, but hey, look, there's some things happening. Now, this room here is an open collaboration space, and I've been seeing a lot more of this. Well, I was prior to my situation, or the situation that we're in. And the thing that I like about this is it's more casual. So here again, we've got a rectangular table, but look at how the chairs are configured. Nobody's head is to the back of the display, so all those remote participants get to see everybody. Here, I love this space because what do we've got here? Surface Hub. Surface Hub on wheels. They wheeled it into this room. We've got a few people sitting around, and we've got somebody standing here presenting content, and they're doing a nice casual collaboration conversation. Now, you're probably asking me, well, where's this thing plugged into? Well, it doesn't need to be plugged in all the time because it has an optional battery here that you can run for over an hour of meetings. So imagine in an education scenario. And Nigel, what's the astronaut's name from Canada?
Oh.
Hatfield.
Yes, Chris Hatfield.
Chris Hatfield. So imagine you've got a school with different grades of kids, and you got Chris Hatfield as your guest speaker. Well, Chris can be remote. I'm on first name basis with him. I ran into him once, but Mr. Hatfield, probably Dr. Hatfield, can be remote and do a presentation to the younger class. Then you can move the Surface Hub to the next room where there's an older class and have a conversation with them that's maybe a little more sophisticated, because you can be on wheels and you can have battery. But what about connectivity? Surface Hub can be wired or wireless. So think of the opportunity. You don't have to put a Surface Hub in every room. Sure, the Microsoft people on this call might want you to, but that might not be realistic. Maybe you don't have the budget for it. Well, you have the flexibility to move from one room to the next to the next. Now, what about not necessarily a Surface Hub for every room? What's the other option? Let's take a look at, in this case, a Microsoft Teams room. And I'm going to hang up that call, and we're going to move over to my other meeting room. And we're going to take a look at.
And while you do that, Evan, my example is exactly that. We've got one Surface Hub. We're lucky to have one, but we do wheel it in and out of spaces. So I wheeled it into this meeting room and even set up a coordinated meeting join while we were doing it.
Nice.
But we wheel it into any of the areas that we need to collaborate. So same premise. I know I can't convince Spud to buy 10 of these, but we got one, and with others, it's a bookable resource and simple to join.
Yeah, that's just it. It's easy to use. Now, here's my disaster office. Your office is so clean, Nigel. And now I'm sitting in front of it. Look, it's not a different meeting room. Here's the Surface Hub over here. I just didn't move it all the way out of the frame, but typical meeting room, maybe it's got one of these, I call it the analog whiteboard, just a grease board. And I'm talking to you through a Microsoft Teams room system. The camera, if you might have noticed at the beginning, as soon as I turned it on, it kind of found me, it zoomed in. It's also got a remote. So I have the ability to have some presets on it. I can zoom in, I can zoom out. I have the ability to change the angle if I so choose. Now, let's talk about meeting rooms on my legacy whiteboard. When we break it down, there's three aspects that we need to consider. The facilities, which is the physical room itself. The design, which I refer to as furniture. Remember, wheels on chairs and tables that aren't rectangular. Why do you not want a long rectangular boardroom table when you've got a camera and a display up here? I say because of the drinking bird syndrome. We've all been in that scenario where the display's over here. There's always somebody's head in our way. So we're doing this, drinking bird. We want to avoid that. We don't want people to have to push themselves away from the table necessarily just to see the display. So change the shape of the table, design. Lastly, technology. But you know what? Here's the problem with what we're doing right now. I keep standing in front of this, so you can't see what's behind me. Microsoft Teams with their vendors, our third-party vendors, like these camera systems, combined with artificial intelligence from Microsoft, we can do this. Watch what happens. I'm going to switch my camera. I'm going to kind of move out of the way. And watch what happens. You see that? So what you saw there is artificial intelligence. The camera system that I have plugged in here now was able to identify the whiteboard. You saw the green outline, and you saw that the camera's off to the side, but now all of a sudden, magic, it frames it perfectly. I can see it here. I see facilities, design, and technology. Now look what happens when I walk back into the frame. Oh, I'm not so important anymore, because this is. I want you to see this, not necessarily me. You can see through me because this has been digitized. So all three of these things combined, facilities, design, technology, what did I say before, adds up to something we call personas. Personas. Now watch what happens. When I was writing that, you couldn't see it, but now you can because it's been digitized, and you have to excuse my terrible handwriting. But now when I stand back in front of it, you can still see it. If I didn't like what I wrote, I erase it, step away, ta-da. Now, Microsoft Teams with their vendor products and artificial intelligence, there's a lot of options. I'm using one vendor's Microsoft Teams room camera systems, and you know what? The brilliant part of what I just did didn't have anything to do with me. The camera that I'm working with right now, I've had for 8 years. You can get it for less than $100 from Microserve. The entire system together, completely different story. So we have this capability in Microsoft Teams Room. It's called Content Camera. Now, why did I want you to see this? We went from our desktop, Surface Hub, Microsoft Teams Room, want to go back to the desktop. Why? Well, imagine being able to do this from your laptop. Microsoft is including the ability to use Content Camera in the Microsoft Teams desktop client. For me, on my Surface devices, what that allows me to do is from my Surface device, I can go to a customer meeting. I can point the rear or front-facing camera of the Surface at their whiteboard and do the exact same thing. So imagine having colleagues in other cities, other parts of the province, other locations. You want to keep them engaged, and all you have in your office or your home is this, no problem. Use your Surface camera, and look, it's coming to other devices as well. It's all dependent on the manufacturer's camera that happens to be in that system.
Now,
So,
Evan, did I see that comes available? I think it's what, November, December timeframe?
yeah, it should be soon. We announced it at Microsoft Ignite, I think last year, and Microsoft Ignite this year is coming next month. So we announced it before. And here's a secret, and I might get in trouble for saying this, but I'm pretty sure we said this at Ignite last time. We'll be able to do the same thing with these. So now imagine, I talked about traveling just with my Surface Duo. Imagine now I can go anywhere and do this with my Android or iOS devices. So we went from desktop, Surface, Microsoft Teams Room, desktop, back to mobile device.
What I'm excited about this is being able to do that from home. I've got a whiteboard at home that nobody gets to see today if I'm brainstorming or doing other ideas, right? So I think that'll be a game changer for many of us to help collaborate and whiteboard, even for those of us at home, right?
And it's just, you know what, I have more fun with it because the audience is more engaged. The audience can ask more questions because they can see what's going on. And I like to draw pictures. So I'm a technical guy. When somebody asks me a question, I can explain it to them, but this way I can draw it. That's how I use this on a regular basis. So that's all I have for today. If there's any questions, or Nigel, you wanted me to cover anything else, I'm all yours.
Yeah, you bet. No, thanks, Evan. That's really cool, and I hope some of you haven't seen that before, so it was more exciting to get to see it firsthand here. Before we jump right over to Q&A, I just really wanted to touch on not a big sales pitch, but just in terms of where Microserve can help. A big focus of our investment in the past couple of years is really everything to do with modern workplace. These are their key practice areas of the enabling technology that we focus on. Much of what you've seen today on the far left in terms of collab, but a lot of this is, what constrained organizations early days of the pandemic is how do you deal with security? How do you manage, doing this in a secure way? Conditional access, hybrid identities into cloud. Some of the organizations, certainly in public sector, for example, haven't gotten that far yet. So really all I would say, I don't want to read all these to you, is just, if there's an area that you're stuck with that's preventing you from enabling some of this technology, we're definitely here to help and more than happy to do so. Diving a little bit deeper, just as one of the examples of some of the things we've been thinking about and creating in terms of trying to enable hybrid work a little bit better, decided to pick one offering that we went live with last year, which is expanding. We've always done boardroom as a service type offerings, from the AV perspective, but we now extended this to be a more all-inclusive Teams Room solution. So all the components around getting this actually set up, getting your Teams Room device or your service hubs deploying it, even using modern management under Microsoft Endpoint Manager, for example. We can take all of that on as a service, should you so choose. Obviously, we can do it project-based and things like that as well. And then the ongoing operations, to me, the dependence of these rooms is going to become so much more important. If 3 people in the office are sitting there, they're all ready to collaborate, but one coworker is stuck at home, if they can't have that experience that allows them to participate, that's a big deal. And I think it's only going to be more of a big deal as we move forward. support. So creating even more spaces, having more areas to do that, but making sure the technology continues to work. We're nearly 100 boardrooms that we're already doing this for and supporting, right down to we get an alert if the microphone goes down or the camera goes down. We can actually then proactively go and block the room off for the rest of the day, for example. So some really cool stuff that we can achieve with that. And happy to explore deeper conversations. The one last thing I wanted to touch on was just taking this a little bit further in terms of that client, end user client experience within the boardrooms. For example, we can offer up the plaques that can sit on the boardroom table, up on the wall, or whatever else. You can scan the QR code, jump into sort of a self-service portal. We can put any type of content you want there. A lot of the quick how-to stuff, people got really good at Teams at home, but when they get back to the work environments, they might not have ever seen a Teams room before. And it's the, oh my God, how do I share content? These things that you knew how to do. Now, they're going to pick that up pretty fast, but maybe just the self-starter tips really help them get going, for example. So we've been able to offer this. In the middle screen, you actually even see the call button there. What's really cool about that, that's a direct dial. It can be to our AV help desk, or it can even be to your help desk, if they're ready to brace for a Teams room and meeting room support. So we also then blend that in the fact we can look at the AV consoles. We can monitor the Teams admin console to actually see the status of devices in real time at the desk, and then relay that back to figure out if this is something we can fix remotely. A lot of it in the early days has been around how to and how do I get up and running, how do I share content. But over time, that'll transition to more of the when stuff breaks, and that can bleed into our more traditional offerings from our AV team, which means we can actually then reach out to the AV field team and say, hey, I'm sitting in what we call the Capilano boardroom right now. Hey, the camera's gone down. Can you send somebody to go fix that? We can even maybe do that before a user called to complain, for example. So I just wanted to leave you with some of the ideas in terms of if boardrooms and that technology for hybrid work are going to be that much more important, how do we enable some of the support that might come with that? So with that, how are we doing for time? We've got about another 10 minutes here. Happy to take any questions that anybody has. And yes, Mark, you're right. It is absolutely raining in Vancouver. What a surprise, eh? We've not seen large adoption of whiteboard app in Teams. Are we seeing, could somebody read the rest of that off to me? I missed the last part before it.
We have not seen large adoption of the whiteboard app in Teams. Are you seeing people using that? Sorry. Are you seeing people using that app for collaboration spaces, or is it a slow adoption curve from your experience?
It's as slow as we enable it. I'm super excited by it. I think it's got a lot of potential. But I think that really starts going into the roles that we play in IT is shifting. We need to be the enablers of that technology. We need to show people how it can be used. Same thing as what Evan was showing in terms of the content cameras. How many of you didn't even know that existed? So many of our conversations, that's a new thing that nobody's seen before. And I think the whiteboard is just like that, Mark. I think it's something that when people actually start experiencing it, having their first meeting, it can start with us having a meeting with our stakeholders and going, okay, well, why don't we whiteboard some ideas, pull it up and share it? I want to say my only personal challenge with it, within my team, it's been awesome, but that whole guest access challenge has been, we can't share it to you today so we can all whiteboard together because of the guest access and some of the security changes. I hear that is going to get fixed at some stage, but within your own org, it's phenomenal to be able to help collaborate and drive some of the sort of more ideation and some of the other things we need to do as a team. Or in our world, it's drawing network diagrams and stuff like that, for example. Okay, any other thoughts or questions or comments? Are we crazy? Are we off base? Mark?
So the demo is great, and it takes it took a bunch of planning to make that all work from Evan's side and get all the bits and pieces put together. And we would love to do something like that for our internal stakeholders. So is this something that Evan could come wow our audience with? We have many of the bits you've talked about. We're actually well on our journey to collaboration spaces and Teams rooms, and you just built one for us and are coming to build another one in December. From that side, we have a variety of them. But I think we've experienced a lot of it, and to put a nice package together, I would love to be able to offer something like that to our internal stakeholders on the campus.
And I mean, I don't want to speak for Nigel, but I'm pretty sure that you guys, your organization, guys and girls, would be able to do what I just did based on the fact that you've got the Surface Hub as well as an MTR in that office that you're in. So, I mean, I'm more than happy to help, but I don't know if I'm necessary with the brain, with the brain power on this call. Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. We can do something. I'm more than willing to help out the team.
Yeah, you bet. I think, Mark, that is a great idea, because I think that's the limitation today is people just don't know what's possible, right? So the more we can get in stakeholders' faces and show them some of that, it's a great way. They go, oh my God, we could be doing what now? That whole ecosystem really starts becoming clear when people get to try and see it, right?
And you know what, even from a Microsoft perspective, I teach my colleagues things every day, and I have to teach myself, because Teams itself it can do so much. And that's why I've just decided to specialize in two very specific aspects of Teams, the media workloads, meetings and calling, but it does so much more. So even Microsoft people, I have to show them how to do certain things. Mm-hmm. I think so from an adoption perspective, and I talk about business pains and business processes, and with Microserve coming in, helping understand what your business pains and business processes are, and how we can work to eliminate or mitigate business pains and improve business processes through Microsoft Teams and all the peripheral technology. Because everybody uses it a little bit different. To me, Teams is a snowflake. You'll never see the same deployment twice. You'll never see even from a desktop client. My desktop client looks different than probably anybody else's. And that's where it's advantageous, but it can also be challenging.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like we need to pair up with the marketing teams internal to our organization and go, how do we do a campaign to show you what you could be doing? And I think that's so much more essential as more and more staff come back to the office, but some are still at home, right? Like that whole idea of how we could be collaborating better and not sort of creating that meeting inequality for those that aren't there, right?
Well, I think the other side that we need to figure out how to train staff on is, so the tools are great. Now, how to actually run a meeting effectively when you have a bunch of external stakeholders. How do you keep them engaged? How do you not have the proximity bias? And how do you run an actual effective hybrid meeting with people in multiple meeting rooms plus at home? What are all the things? Because that's actually the training we need to do next as we explore the future of work, the return to work strategy, and the idea of remote workers and hybrid meetings. And that's what most people are afraid of in our organization. And then that fear actually stops them from adopting some of the tools. So we need to help them overcome that fear, because it's the biggest resistance we see to the future of work. So,
and I think that is a really good point, Mark, because today was actually the first day I finally got to see chat bubbles popping up on the big screen while I'm in a boardroom. But some of the things that we did at home when we're on our computer in front of the machine, we had chat window up and we were chatting back and forth and giving people thumbs up and waving our arms and stuff like that, right? But you're right in terms of once we're back in the boardroom, do our brains just switch off and we stop using some of that, or do we go, you still need to be using meeting chat in parallel to the conversation, you need to be watching the screen for whose hands up, to do that? And that's going to take some work. I think that is where all of us as organizations need to focus efforts and really show and enable that, to go, the same things you're doing at home you need to do in the boardroom. Otherwise, the staff at home are going to have a real hard time getting words in edgewise when there's 5 A types sitting in a boardroom or whatever it is, right? Not that we have any of those at Microserve, but well, thank you everybody. Hopefully you found some of this informative and you got to see some new things maybe you haven't seen before. Evan, really appreciate your time today, jumping on and having a way better demo room than I could set up last minute here. But no, I think that was great.
Great. Thanks, everyone.